This video is going to show you how we can use factors and all of our factoring techniques to help us solve equations. And the underlying idea here is something called the zero product property. So first let's review a couple types of equations that you may have seen before. We've got this type over here on the left. And when you look at this one over here on the left and you look at the variables, this is just a plain old x, or an x to the first power. But if you look at the equations on the right, we start having exponents higher than 1. And if you remember how to solve the type on the left that just involves an x to the first power, we just want to isolate the variable. So in this case, we would do something like, maybe multiply by 2 to clear your fractions. You'd have x plus 2 equals 2x minus 8. And then you can move your variables to one side and you'll get x equals 10 here. But when you have an x squared as well as an x to the first, things get a little more complicated and we need another type of technique than just isolating the variable. And it's going to turn out that our factors are going to come in handy here. So let's first talk about what the zero product property is. So let's pretend for a second that these three people have written their favorite number on the back side of each of these boards. So we'll give this guy the name Alan, and we'll call this person Betty, and we'll call this person Carla. And they each have their favorite number written on the back of that card. And if I told you that when I multiplied Alan's number by Betty's number, and then I took that answer and I multiplied it by Carla's number, and I got 0 after I multiplied their three favorite numbers together, is there anything you could tell me? The only way you can get a product of 0, that's the answer to a multiplication problem of 0, is if one of the original numbers were 0. So either Alan has a favorite number of 0, or Betty has a favorite number of 0, or Carla has a favorite number of 0, or maybe all of them have this favorite number of 0, but somebody has to have a 0. So we say if a times b times c equals 0, then either a equals 0, or b equals 0, or c equals 0. And that idea is called the zero product property. And it's what we're going to use to solve equations when we have exponents bigger than 1. So let's take a look at an example. So this is the equation from the first slide that said x squared minus 6x equals 0. The thing that's nice about the zero product property is it actually tells you in the name the steps that you're supposed to take to solve the problem. The first thing we're supposed to do is make the equation equal 0, because then I'm going to be able to use the property. Well, this one is already equal to 0, so I'm done with that step. The next thing I'm supposed to do is write it as a product. And the zero product property says if you multiply numbers together to get 0, you know one of the original numbers was 0. But this equation right here has a subtraction sign. It's not a multiplication problem. So what I need to do is rewrite this as a multiplication problem so that I have a product. And the way we rewrite things as a multiplication problem, that's known as factoring. So in this case, I've got a greatest common factor of x, and I can rewrite this as x times x minus 6, and that's equal to 0. So now I've got my product. And here are my two factors. One of them is x, one of them is x minus 6. And I'm saying that if I multiply those things together, and I get 0, then either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. So either x is 0 or x is 6. So I have two solutions to this. And if you wanted to check your answers, your original equation was x squared minus 6x equals 0. If I plug in 0, do I get 0? I think so. And if I plug in 6, does 6 squared minus 6 times 6, does that equal 0? I think so. So they both check. I get two solutions, 0 and 6. So let's take a look at another example. Again, this is an equation that involves an exponent higher than 1. So I'm going to try to use the zero product property. And again, the name tells me what I'm supposed to do in order. The first thing I'm supposed to do is have a 0 on one side of the equal sign. I don't have that in this case, so I'm going to add 4x to both sides and take care of the 0 step in the problem. The next thing I need to do is have a product. That's a multiplication problem. That's factoring. So in this case, again, I have a greatest common factor. This time it's 2x. So I have 2x times x plus 2 equals 0. And now I have two factors that are multiplied together and give me 0. And the property says that either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. The first factor, 2x equals 0, that leads me to a solution of x equals 0. The second factor leads me to a solution of negative 2. So again, I get two solutions to this equation. Let's take a look at one more. So I've got x squared plus 2x equals 3. Another equation has an exponent higher than 1, so we can't just isolate x, we have to do something else. So here we go. First step is to make it equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. And I get that from subtracting 3 from both sides. So I have x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. The next thing I need to do is rewrite it as a product, which involves factoring. Now this is a trinomial, and to factor a trinomial, I know that that typically comes from two binomials, and we have a little hint over here that this 2x came from a 3x minus 1x. This is if you don't have a lot of experience factoring trinomials at this point. So to get an x squared, I'm going to have an x times an x. And the hint here is that to get the 2 and from the negative 3, I can have a plus 3x and a minus 1x. So if I multiply x plus 3 times x minus 1, I get the correct middle term. So that's the factoring part, and then I use the property which says that if I have two things that are multiplied together, give me 0, either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. So that means that x is negative 3 or x is 1. So I have two solutions again.